third part of the question is, if F price of the security is 178, A part of the question is whether arbitrage exists or not. Please write your answer in the chat box. So write down answer for the third question. Actual F price is rupees 178, comma, it is different in comparison to what it should have been. That is rupees 180. So arbitrage exists, full stop. Three B, calculate arbitrage in absolute term. So since we have given answer that arbitrage is existing, so of course we are required to make the computation of the same in second part of the question in absolute term. I want you to write in the chat box that what are the transactions in which we will enter upon today and the amount of arbitrage at the end of the year in the chat box. So in B part of the question, let us have understanding that say how to make the calculation of answer. Let us assume that say the today's date is 1st of January and end of the year is 31st of December. No need to assume the dates, but just you can relate better. First of all, let us have understanding before we write answer. Suppose there is a person called Mr. A who is entering into the transactions of arbitrage. What he can observe? He can observe that so the price of the underlying asset should be 180, but instead of that it is 178. 178 is lower than 180, so that is the price at which we should buy the underlying asset. Since we are going to buy the underlying asset at 178 at the end of the period, today we have to sell security. When you will sell security, you will receive rupees 150. Let us assume that say you sell security say to someone called Mr. P, to whom you sell security. Now you have short position on cash market. To cover up the short position on cash market, what will you do? Say you will borrow stock. Let us assume that say you borrow stock from Mr. X to cover up the short position in the cash market. The amount of 150 rupees that say you have received, that is invested for a time period of 1 year. Now what happens at, listen carefully what I am going to speak. What happens at say after 2 months, that is on 20th of February, what will happen? You have sold security to Mr. P and Mr. P is going to receive the dividend. Have you received the dividend? No. So we are ignoring the dividend income in this calculation for the time being. At the same time, so today we have entered into the forward contract or futures contract to purchase underlying asset at the rate of rupees 178. That is what say we have done. I just repeat the transactions what I have explained to you so far. I have told you something like this so far, that the price of the underlying asset should be 180, but instead of that it is 178. So you enter into the forward or the futures contract to purchase the underlying asset. That is the very first thing that you are doing. Since you are going to buy at the end of the period, so today you are going to sell. What is the price at which you are going to sell? Spot price, that is 150. I am assuming that there is a person called Mr. A who is doing this transaction, and he sells security to a person called Mr. P. Now, to cover up the short position, Mr. A will borrow stock from Mr. X and he will cover the short position. Along with that, on 1st of January, a forward contract or futures contract is entered upon to purchase the underlying asset at the rate of 178. Okay. Now 28th of the February comes. On that date, Mr. P will receive the dividend. So I am not going to receive dividend. We are doing the calculations from Mr. A point of view. Now year ends on 31st of December. Mr. A will have 1. Maturity amount of deposit rupees 186, that is 150 rupees plus 24%. Second, holding F contract to buy underlying asset at the rate rupees 178. Third, since you had borrowed stock, you are having liability to refund stock. So what will happen? We understand that, say, from Mr. A point of view, he has maturity 186. He is having a forward contract / futures contract to purchase a security at 178, and that will be refunded to Mr. X. Now Mr. X says that, see, I don't expect anything more from you, but at least being holder of the security, whatever dividend income that I could have received, at least you compensate that to me. So Mr. A says that, okay, what was the dividend income that, say, you could have received? Mr. X replies that it is an amount of rupees 5. Mr. A says that, say, here is 5 rupees. Now Mr. X says that I could have received this dividend income before 10 months, and investing that for 10 months I could have earned some amount of interest. So you kindly compensate that also. Okay, here is the 1 rupee of interest, 5 rupees into 24% into 10 divided by 12. So we understand that, say, 186 minus total of this 3, that comes to, I think, 184. So ultimately you result into the arbitrage of rupee 2. That is what, say, we understand is the amount of the arbitrage calculation that you have to make. So write down answer for the question. Answer for question number 3 me. In that, write down assuming that Mr. A is entering into transaction of arbitrage, full stop. At the beginning of year, in bracket I am writing today, Mr. A will enter in following transactions. In that, write down 1, sale security to Mr. P at the rate of 150 today. Second, borrow security from Mr. X to cover up short position in cash market. Third, invest rupees 150 at the rate of 24% for 1 year. Fourth, enter in F contract / futures to purchase security at the rate rupees 178. Full stop. With paragraph, write down, after 2 months dividend income of rupees 5 will be received by Mr. P. In bracket, write down, neither by A nor by X. Again with paragraph, write down, at the end of year position of Mr. A will be as under. In that, write down A liability to refund security, B liability to make payment of dividend and interest on dividend. For 10 months. C holding F contract to buy security at the rate 178. D maturity amount of deposit rupees 186, 150 plus 150 into 24% into 12 divided by 12. With paragraph write down, calculation of arbitrage for Mr. A. Maturity amount of deposit 186 less purchase security 178 for refunding, less dividend rupees 5 which lender could have received, less interest on dividend, again that lender could have received 5 rupees into 24% into 10 divided by 12. So ultimately that will result into arbitrage of rupee 2. And of course friends, this is always the difference between the equilibrium price and the actual price. Actual price is different than the equilibrium price by rupees 2, and that is arbitrage. So lastly, summary of the entire answer. This is a question in which we understand that we have a new point, that is the dividend. Futures price of the underlying asset can be calculated by two methods. One is that say you subtract the dividend and interest on dividend, and the second is that say from the spot price of the security you deduct the present value of the dividend effect and then you compound the net value. The next is question number 2a, in which the arbitrage opportunity is there because the price is more. Then in that case you should sell the underlying asset and you are going to buy the underlying asset today. In that the calculation is quite simple, because you can logically understand that say since you purchase the security you receive the dividend income. Next is when the price of the security is 178, the price is low, so you should buy in forward, you should buy in futures. So today you should sell security. So today you are going to sell, and to cover up the short position you are going to borrow. Importantly, we understand that say lender of the security is required to be compensated not only with the security but also with the dividend income and interest on dividend. You can very well understand that say at the end of the year price of the security might have increased even to rupees 500. You don't bother. Why? Because you are holding a forward contract, futures contract to buy the security at 178 only. If the price is falling down, then in that case you cannot take advantage of the lower price in the spot market. Why? Because say you already have entered into the forward/futures contract to buy the security. This is what we understand.